It's Baxi's musical podcast.
When a songwriter writes a song, it doesn't always start out sounding like the finished product. Sometimes a song will go through a bunch of mutations before it's finally released and you can say, it's finished. Occasionally, an artist might release alternative versions of a song they've done. Maybe the lyrics are different. Maybe there's something added or something taken away. And then sometimes an artist and his producer will take a look at a song and completely deconstruct it and reconstruct it to become something as good, if not better, than the original. My guest today is Imaad Wasif. Imaad has spent much of his career playing in other bands, including the folk Implosion with Dinosaur Jr.'s Lou Barlow, also been a touring member of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs for years. But he's also released 6 remarkable solo albums of intensely personal and intimate-sounding songs, including 2022's So Long, Mr. Fear, which is available on Sonic Ritual Records. This is a beautiful collection of songs written and recorded during the pandemic, and it's absolutely hypnotic and breathtaking all at the same time. This year, Imaad Wasif collaborated with producer Money Mark to reconstruct the title track. Money Mark has built a reputation of working with the Beastie Boys and Linkin Park and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and many, many more to give a different interpretation to the song, So Long, Mr. Fear. The new remix has just been released on a new EP entitled Mr. Fear So Long, and as that title would suggest, it turns Imaad Wasif's initial interpretation of his own song on its ear, with the final result being absolutely amazing. Taking a song that was already great and finding a way to turn it into something beyond its original version is pretty remarkable. And the final result of this collaboration bears this out. This is my conversation with singer, songwriter, and guitar player Imaad Wasif on Baxi's musical podcast.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. It's so cool to talk to you. I interviewed Lou Barlow just a couple of weeks ago from Dinosaur
amazing.
Jr. and Sebadoh and Folk Implosion, which you've been a part of for a while. The guy only lives like 35 minutes from my house. How did you get involved with Lou Barlow?
Oh my God. So I was living in Berkeley at the time in California, and my first band had opened up for Sebadoh a bunch. And Lou and I kind of, over the course of a few years, had just struck up a friendship through all this time that we spent on the road. Though I was really terrified of him for a very long time because I was like maybe 18 when I started touring, and I viewed him as this like songwriting giant, and so I was always like really like kind of scared to talk to him, and I misinterpreted his like normal awkwardness as like aloofness, but he's just like a really shy person. So it took us like, a very long time to actually engage. But when we finally did, I remember the one thing that we had this night where he like opened up to me about how he wrote Soul and Fire. And it just like made this huge impression on me because I had been just exploring writing from dream interpretation in my own like work, in my own songwriting and stuff. So that was like a huge connective point for us. But anyway, back to the story. I was living in Berkeley at the time, and I had a band called Alaska that was like kind of a psych folk band. He called me. He was living in LA, and he was like, "I've been working on this record, this folk implosion record, and I just am like not happy like with where it's at. And would you want to come down to LA and work on it with me?" So it was like it was just totally serendipitous. At the time, my band had just broken up, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, like I'll do it. I love it."
Well, I mean, when he calls, how do you say no to that?
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. It was a really amazing experience, coming down to LA and just starting to write songs with him and working with him all the time. And I think LA at that time was a really kind of beautiful and uncharted world for me.
And now look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say, I really love the new album, So Long, Mr. Fear. I think it's just a remarkable record, as a lot of your records are. I mean, and we'll talk about the remixes in just a little bit, but it's such a rich and intimate sounding record. Tell me about So Long, Mr. Fear, as opposed to some of the other things that you had done.
Yeah, I mean that record to me still is resonating so much. And it's coming out of this very difficult period of time that we all experienced together in this country, and I mean in the world. And that record in particular, like, I was in lockdown as many of us were, and I was like, I have to figure out how to make my own record. Like, I had never fully embraced recording on my own. So that was really kind of that was my first real in-depth plunge into that world. And fortunately I had my friend Bob Bruno, who plays he's played on a lot of my records, but and recorded with me forever. He plays in Best Coast, and he's also just like a total mystery, amazing. His lineage is incredible, but I would send him tracks that I was working on, and he would contribute to them, send them back, and almost we just started this kind of amazing relationship with these songs. And what I initially realized, because I started the record right before lockdown, and I had actually gone to this abandoned mansion that a friend of mine had access to, and we set up all this recording gear in there and like recorded, and I just wasn't happy with things the way they were. And then lockdown came, and I was like stuck in this situation. And so what I realized was, like, it's all about completely connecting to the inner voice without any outside influence. And that was the one beautiful thing that lockdown afforded me, is that I was so isolated, and I was able to record it anytime I wanted, and like when I actually felt like doing it, and I was able to do it in any way that I like, when the expression was completely pure. So a lot of the versions of the songs that are on the record are first or second takes for a lot of the vocal and instrumentation, like the main instrument. So I would sing and play either piano or guitar and sing, which I've always also been afraid of, because it's not the way you normally record anymore. You kind of go and track everything separately, and but I think for me, everything's centered around the emotion and the voice. And I built the record outward from that.
When you say you were disappointed with how it was going, was it about the lyrical content of the music, or was there something beyond that?
No, well, it was like I was in this abandoned mansion, and my initial idea for it was to just like make this super raw record that was like just me playing, recording, kind of like Rogue. And I had recorded like the whole, probably I think 26 songs in that environment, in that mansion. And then kind of going through them, I was just like, no, it's like not doing this isn't like what I want to present to the world. Because there was not a lushness to it. There was not like, there was kind of this one dimensionality to it.
So,
Yeah.
having gone through the process of doing this really by yourself because of the pandemic and the inability to go to recording studios, and having kind of like a do-it-yourself approach to this, is this the kind of thing that you would do again, or do you prefer the old way of doing the pre-pandemic way of recording music?
I think it's really just up to the tone of the songs, really. I absolutely love being able to record vocals at 4 in the morning. Like, you know, you kind of are not on anyone else's time, so it's like your time only. And yeah, I love that experience. I don't know. I mean, I'm just starting to work on new songs, and have been like actually working in a studio with my friend Bob, and we've been demoing out new songs, and it's been interesting to work together in a physical space again. I hadn't experienced that in a long time.
I absolutely love the title track "So Long, Mr. Fear." And it talks about the fears that we all kind of hold since childhood, and with the pandemic, it brings a whole new sense of what fear really means. Especially early on when there were so many questions about what this virus was all about and how exposed we were and everything else. But tell me about the title track song "So Long, Mr. Fear."
That song is definitely, I think, maybe the first song that I've ever written that is like dealing with a very like I'm vocalizing against a lot of the pressures that I felt that were thrust on me, and a lot of friends that I knew, everyone that was going through this sort of situation of what the vaccine is, and like the feeling of getting forced to make decisions that were really not, you were not necessarily comfortable with. And I was really, that was feeding into a lot of other fears, and opening up a lot of other fears for me. And I started really thinking about, yeah, just like I started thinking about how long I had been kind of suffering through that and
Mm.
how much I wanted to be past that and how much I knew that so many people want to be past these fears that keep us locked into patterns and limitations, really. And like we're limitless creatures and we're limitless, there's a universe of infinite possibility, and we somehow get into these modes of thought and feeling and like ideas that we can't do certain things, we can't be certain things. And I mean, that song really was like a gift to me. Like it like came to me, and it was also this record in particular I'd never written on piano, and I had gotten a piano just before the pandemic and sort of taught myself how to write,
Mm.
because I've always been on guitar. And so that song was also a song, due to my limitations on my understanding of how to play piano, like it was a song that came out. So it's really just like there's some kind of magic to that song, and I really revere. I feel humbled by whatever that song actually has, because that was the thing. Like in doing this rework or this remix that Money Mark just did of that song, like he totally took that song to another place, but he responded to that song.
No, he definitely did, and I want to ask you about that because this is a guy who's worked with the Beastie Boys and Linkin Park and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and all of which are very different artists than the kind of artist that you are, particularly in your solo work. So when he hears this song and it connects with him, what did he say to you about the song and what it meant to him to take this on to remix it?
No, I mean, he just told me that he loved the song. And
Mm.
for me, like knowing him, like if you listen to Sabotage, like that Beastie Boys song,
Yeah.
and you take his parts out of Sabotage, it's like not as powerful. If you take his part out of like Where It's At by Beck, that song is not as powerful. It's like I knew that he has this ability to, go in and like enhance a song that already exists. But this was interesting in that he didn't actually want to, like, we weren't writing the song, together. The song was already written, and he was just like, the song is there in that whole melody and your lyrics. And like, I want to just Frankenstein this. Like, I want to do my thing. And like we talked a little bit about, we're both like super into like Station to Station by Bowie and stuff. Like we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about that, but like we didn't want to like, none of us are interested in like rehashing like something that already exists. It's kind of just like, how can this become something new? And he really like did, take it to a very interesting place, I thought.
It's really interesting, and the final result is awesome. There's a part of me that always wonders when when this happens and a song gets reinterpreted through a new version. As the artist who creates this song, and
Yeah.
you already said that some of these songs were one two take type of
Yeah.
situations. I would imagine that any artist creatively gets a certain level of tunnel vision about things.
Yeah.
So you see things one way, and you may not even consider that there's another way to look at a song like this with a totally new arrangement. I mean, it really transforms the whole song into something very different, as good, if not. I don't want to say better because the bones and structure of that song are just so perfect. But at the end of it, when he presents you with what he's done,
Yeah.
are you surprised by the way he was able to interpret it? Was it what you expected to get back from him?
Well, I did go into the studio a couple times with him because I put, guitar down and I recut like a couple of the vocals on it. So I was sort of aware of his process, but it was interesting in working on it, or like going into the studio and see the way that he was working on it. It was like he was actually doing what you just talked about, which
Yeah.
is something that I mean, I even am trying to practice in my sort of in my demo form. You become attached to the way that a song exists in your mind, and then you bring it into this situation where you can completely dismantle that and give it like this other life. But your ego gets in the way, and then you're like, you're attached to this sort of, no, it just has to be this way. But really, that's doing the song a disservice. You owe it to the song to explore it. I think it's just difficult for me at that point, like because the record was already out. Like I couldn't have gone like, oh, like I want to do a remix of this. I want to approach it totally differently because it was just in my head that way. But so yeah, it was really just super cool to see the way that Mark did that. Like the way that where he took it.
There's a lot of other great songs on this record. It's not just the title track, but I just watched the video for Fader, I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that song. It's got a real interesting, like almost like a John Lennon vibe to it. Tell me about that song.
That was definitely that song I'd been carrying around for a while, actually. That was not a song that I wrote during pandemic. I think another one of the extrapolations of my kind of loss or my tendency to dive deeply and lose myself in the idea of love and what that means to me. Yeah, I don't know that I would be able to articulate anything really about it that would help anybody, because it's just I know that it translates really well. I love that was originally a guitar song, so that was the first song that I transposed to
Mm.
piano when I learned how to play to write on piano. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this on piano, and I did that that way. But it's like kind of like I feel like where it landed is in like this David Lynch world. Like I
Mm.
always I always imagine that song in a David Lynch film.
Well, it's still not too late. He could still contact you by the end of the day.
That'd be amazing.
The other track that I really, really love, in fact, I think it might just be my second favorite, apart from the title track, is the final track on the album, "Jealous Kind."
Yeah, you got the Dolly Parton reference in there. I yeah, I was listening to that song a bunch. That's I mean, I think that in my mind is kind of a very introspective song, and tearing apart a lot of it's coming to terms with a lot of things within myself. And I've struggled with this feeling of being imprisoned by jealousy in my life.
Mm.
It's a very toxic kind of emotion that I've felt. And I think weirdly I wanted to write this song for, like, not that I'm completely a believer in all forms of astrology, but Scorpios. Like, I've known a lot of Scorpios in my life, and it's just like there was a kind of idea that Scorpios have this like nature to them, this
Right.
jealous nature. And so, yeah. But I don't want to just toss it off to just being like an astrology song about Scorpios. But I think with any song that I have, it's if I could achieve any sense of universality with it. And I think that's a beauty for any song that really speaks to someone. It's like whatever the person meant by that song when they wrote it, it doesn't need to mean that to that person. Just the fact that the emotion in it affects you.
When you write a song that has like a personal connection with you for whatever reason, so in the case of "Jealous Kind," this is an emotion that you struggle with, and you're
Yeah.
able to get that emotion out, on tape or whatever. Does that help you kind of formulate like a way to deal with that kind of emotion, or is it just purely a statement of fact that you have, that this is a part of your makeup, jealousy, or does it help you kind of work your way through it?
I think both.
Mm.
That's really, yeah, that's apt of you to say. Like, yeah, it's both. I mean, also the amazing thing is that that song exists in an eternal sense. So it's like every time I perform it, I'm given to that thought and that emotion. And because these issues like come up all the time, and you're constantly kind of living through them. And I think we're always trying to ascend. We're always trying to get higher, rise out of these kind of things that we struggle with in our lives. And so, like, yeah, every time I play that song, I feel this sense of kind of beauty or relief, like in playing it and singing it.
You also have a "Poet of the Damned," which you sing with Karen Ofem at Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful song. And I know you've got a long connection with them as a touring member of the band. Tell me about getting her to sing in your song.
She weirdly she had heard the sequence, and she was like, oh, like, I love that song. And I was like, well, do you want to sing on it? And she was like, yeah. Which I totally didn't expect, because she's just not, she doesn't really do that. That song is also, as you can probably tell by the lyrics, it's complete pandemic wasteland song. A lot of those feelings, a lot of those kind of like me coming to terms with my place in the universe.
How did you get involved with that band, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs? I mean, you've been a touring member for a while. How did you strike up a relationship with them?
Through mutual friends, really. Like, we met and we played together, and it just like immediately clicked. It was just kind of like, I think the first time I saw them, I had a feeling that I knew these people even
Mm.
before I knew them. Like, I was like, it's sometimes that you get that sense, like souls from lives past. But yeah, it just worked. Like, it clicked. That's a very strange and interesting experience for me. It's on a whole other it's like a whole other dimension than what I normally experience in my own music and all that. So
That's true of everything you've done apart from your solo work. I mean, the folk implosion is very different than your solo work. I mean, the songs that you do seem to be a lot more intimate and certainly more personal. And there's a certain beauty to the songs that you do. I think what's really interesting, and I went back and listened to some of your older albums, and this is I think this is true, and I mean this as a compliment that you could pop on any of your solo albums and the consistency of it is really remarkable. Like you could listen to any of the albums you've done as a solo artist and be moved by those songs. That's not really an easy thing to pull off. To have that kind of consistency over a period of time.
thank you. I'm just getting used to taking compliments. So thank you.
Well, you should take a lot more of them, to be quite honest with you, because the music is really there's a real true beauty to it. So many people can write music and maybe not expose themselves or allow themselves to be vulnerable in the things they sing about. It sounds like for you, this is a really important part of the art that you create, that it really needs to come from within you and not just trite lyrical content about, boy meets girl kind of thing. This is pretty heavy stuff for an artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's like blessing and curse. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
definitely it feels that way for sure. But I don't know. I don't mind the curse,
Yeah.
It's it's like my whole point of living, it's truly like what I believe I was put on the earth to do. So
There's clearly a lot of influences in your music, and I think you can hear it all the way back to the first records and beyond. And it may not just be musical, but also cultural as well. And you can certainly hear that influence. I mean, you grew up in Canada and you're of Indian descent. How much of those
yeah.
things influenced how you approach music or what you hear in your head?
Yeah, I mean, the Indian music that I grew up listening to is definitely deeply within there. I grew up on a lot of Indian classical music. I did not actually find my way to music until I found rock and roll because
Mm,
I was really in a so I was born in Canada, but I was actually raised in the desert in California. And that was a very, very, very desolate kind of place at the time. But I came up finally, like in my teenage years, with this whole like desert rock scene, like that
mm.
Queens of Stone Age, like Caius and Queens of Stone Age. All that stuff was like stuff that I was going to those generator parties and all that kind of stuff. But weirdly, I think I've carried like the lifetimes that I've led like within me, like all the music. And I mean, a lot of the times, I mean, I do believe that I'm on another iteration from another life.
Hmm.
Like this is like I've experienced certain aspects of this before, but I mean, I think that always the sense of I think maybe a number of songwriters would attest to this, but it's like the first feeling of being an outsider, of really realizing that this is your shield, that this is your means of expression, this is your protection against that feeling of not belonging to anything and anyone and like not connecting really, like,
Yeah.
and then having this thing that all of a sudden just like changes your whole life. It's like this idea of like how to rip yourself open and present yourself through a song and like express yourself.
I was going to say because even that kind of lends back to what we were talking about, the vulnerability of being a
Yeah.
songwriter and exposing yourself in that way. A lot of people will gravitate towards music because it helps them forget about some of the things that may be missing in their lives, or certain traumas that we've all eventually go through. But to have that kind of sensitivity and awareness of what you're
Mm.
feeling inside, it is a gift because a lot of people just simply can't express that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely view it as a gift. It's like something that but I mean, there is a lot of work. Like I'm not, I'm definitely not, I'm by far far from being a perfect person. And I think that it's a daily there's a daily awareness. There's a daily focus on maintaining that awareness.
I was listening back to some stuff that you had done almost a decade ago, and you talk about the cultural influences. I was listening to the Grim Tower record, which I
Oh yeah.
really liked. I thought that was really, really a great sounding record.
Yeah, I wish more people knew about that one. Yeah, that was Stephen McBean and I. We had just started like he had just moved to Silver Lake. Like I was living I was living in the next town over, and we just started jamming at his house like in the afternoon outside with acoustic guitars. It was like so fun because I hadn't done that in a long time because I was I was touring a lot and just on my own. And yeah, and a lot of those songs just came from, I mean, we were both like equally, we were very, very into these Roy Harper records. Yeah, there's an amazing record called Stormcock that we were both like, just like, that was an incredible record. And I think we just connected. It was so kind of easy to make that record in a weird way. We recorded it up at his house, the majority of it. And he's still a great friend of mine. Like I still, we still see each other all the time. And yeah, I love Steven. He's such a kook. He's such a strange guy.
But the record came out great. I was listening to it the other day and saying, "My God, how did I miss this one?"
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So the new album out now, and I know the Yaz are about to go touring, I think in May. Are you a part of that tour?
Yeah, I'll be touring with them all year. So it's like we're going, I mean, there's a lot of touring. So, it's taking us to Japan, Australia, South America, Mexico, like all over the US and Europe and stuff. So yeah, I'll be out with them, and then probably between that doing solo shows if I can and if I have the bandwidth to do that.
The Yaz are going to be at the Boston Calling Music Festival at the Harvard Athletic Complex on May 26th. I think you're opening up for the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, that would be fun.
It's such a pleasure to talk to you. Like I said, I've really enjoyed the record. I'm really happy with what Money Mark did. I think he did a really great job giving it a brand new vision. And so I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great to talk to you.
The name of Imaad Wasif's latest album is called So Long, Mr. Fear, and the name of the new EP is called Mr. Fear So Long. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked it. If you did, feel free to share it, like it, review it, tell all your friends about it. You can meet me on social media by searching for Baxy's Fun Bag, or you can email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. And thanks again for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast.